All right, I want to take a quick moment here and go over the forecast for the last weekend of the month. Of course, Friday is Halloween, so there's going to be a lot of local town events and trick or treating and parties and all that kind of thing. And then Saturday is November the 1st. That's also the weekend that time goes back an hour. There's just a lot going on, not this coming weekend, but next weekend, the last weekend of the month. So I thought we'd take a quick look at this. I don't shoot a whole lot of videos. I'm going to try and do more of this as we get closer to winter, but just kind of go through this and show you what the model trends have been looking at. Now, I've been watching this for, gosh, a week or more now, and it's just not, there hasn't been any consistency in the model data whatsoever. And in a transitional season like fall, you kind of expect that. You know, the models just have a really hard time. Yeah, the end of the month here, they've been really struggling. And they're still struggling a little bit. But I'm starting to see a little bit more agreement. And once we get inside 200 hours, I start to feel a little more confident in these medium range model solutions. And we're to that point now. So let's just take a look at this real quick. So first of all, this is the European model, and we're starting off here with Friday morning. This is Halloween morning. And you can see the flow is pretty zonal across the Ohio Valley. Temperatures are pretty typical for this time of the year. We'll take a look at temperature chart here in just a moment, but just from the map that we're looking at here, you can kind of tell temperatures are pretty seasonal for this time of the year. And as we go through the day, you can start to see a little bit of shower activity trying to get going out in the Ozarks, but it's not really going to be much consequence to us here in Kentucky. And then we head into the evening, Halloween evening here, and you can see that rain that we were talking about is kind of diving off to the southwest. So we're high and dry here in central Kentucky. And then we get into November the 1st. Morning still looking good. Now, as we get into the afternoon hours, you can see this trough trying to affect central Kentucky a little bit here. You can see a core of high pressure down to the west, but up here to the northeast of us, you can tell there's a storm system ongoing up there in the eastern Great Lakes. And so that associated troughiness tries to dip down into Kentucky. This could spark some showers, but right now the models are just not really picking up on much. There's not a whole lot of moisture to work with. Temperatures would be a little bit on the cool side, maybe low to mid 50s for highs on Saturday, November the 1st. But overall, the weather's not looking too shabby. And this is the time of the year when you can have anything going on. I mean, it can be 80 degrees, it can be 25 degrees, it can be snowing, it can be raining, anything can happen this time of the year. So, to see, generally dry conditions is pretty nice. Now we'll switch over here to the GFS solution from the same time frame. And let's back up here just a little bit to Halloween again. And you can see that this is what I was talking about earlier. The agreement is starting to come into play here. So as we back up, let me go back a couple more frames here. I want to get into the afternoon hours. Let's see, this is Friday afternoon. All right, so the GFS had this system, almost a cutoff low type of system, but it's a little bit more progressive than your typical cutoff low. And it was just meandering up the Appalachian Mountains here. So during Friday morning, you can see some of those showers affecting central Kentucky. Get into the afternoon hours, and they're kind of still lingering as the center of low pressures over in Virginia. And so in this solution, you'd have a little bit more of a rain chance during the daytime on Friday, but then you can see Friday evening it's losing its influence over us. And so we generally go dry for Halloween evening. And then into November the 1st, here's the morning hours, and then into the afternoon. And it's just more of the same of what the European model was showing us a minute ago, where you can tell there's a storm brewing and going on up there in the Great Lakes, but the precipitation shield with it is staying to the north, and so we don't really get a lot of the precip from it. The one thing that may happen here, and if we switch over here, let me see, we could have some wind gusts, to deal with. Because of the gyre around that low up in the Great Lakes, you can see the wind gusts here Saturday afternoon, November the 1st. into the mid-20s, so we could have some breezy conditions. Now let's take a look at temperatures for that weekend, and I think you're going to see that it's pretty much typical of what you would expect this time of the year, with mid-50s across pretty much the entire part of central Kentucky, eastern Kentucky, looking at mid-50s here. So again, that's pretty typical for this time of the year. If we look at what the European model was showing for temperatures, maybe a couple of degrees cooler, but nothing out of the ordinary for sure. Let's see here. Let's look at this Thursday. Here's Friday afternoon. This is Halloween. You're looking in mid-50s again. The evening of Halloween, low 50s. So the point is, it's not going to be freezing cold, it doesn't look like. If you've got plans to take your kids out for trick-or-treating or whatever the case might be, it doesn't look like that this year is going to be one of those years where it's freezing cold outside. And it also doesn't look like snow or rain is going to be a big deal that particular weekend. So again, we'll just keep an eye on this. We're still a couple hundred hours out. We're just coming into that window where I start to gain a little confidence in these model solutions. So we'll keep an eye on this over the next couple of days. But it looks like the last weekend of the month is going to be pretty nice. One other thing that I wanted to show you as we zoom out to the national view here is what might happen as we go into the early part of November. So obviously we're looking at temperature trends here, and as we get into the early part of November, you can kind of see how this troughiness wants to really sag down into the Ohio Valley. And so it's possible that we could have some pretty chilly weather. There's a low of 28 degrees there on Friday, November the 7th, which is the weekend after the one we were just looking at. So it's possible that we could have a shot of some pretty cold air here early in November, but of course we're starting to get pretty far out at this point. So again, this is just something we're going to have to keep an eye on. But we know that the cold weather is coming, right? So at this point, we're just looking to see when. All right, hopefully that's helpful to you guys. And if you've got plans for the last weekend of the month, hopefully this will help you with your planning a little bit, particularly if you're going to do something outdoors. I know there's weddings and trick-or-treating and local events and all kinds of stuff going on that weekend. So anyway, hopefully this will help. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll talk to you later.